Welcome to my political class. In this video, we will study about Cuban Missile Crisis. Before studying about Cuban Missile Crisis, it is very important to know what happened in World War II. During the World War II, the whole world divided into two forces. One were Allied forces and the other one Axis forces. Both tried to contradict each other on every single point. The Allied forces were a part of four countries. They were USSR, USA, Britain, and France, whereas the Axis forces were part of Italy, Germany, and Japan. Finally, in 1945, the Allied forces were successful in defeating the Axis forces and ultimately lead to surrender of the Axis forces. But not all the member countries of Allied forces were that fortunate. Britain and France have used their resources beyond their capacity in World War II, which finally lead to crisis in both these countries. As the two countries, Britain and France, were facing crisis, they moved out from the race and only USA and USSR were left. So they were declared the supreme and the superpower because both of them were the most developed compared with any other nation state. Now as only two states were left, conflicts are likely to get started. Both of them were following different ideologies. USA was following capitalism, whereas USSR believed in communism. Arms race also started during this era. Both of them were trying to produce as much as arms and were trying to fill their nuclear arsenals. Now let us study about Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuba is a small island nation off the coast of the United States. Cuba was an ally of Soviet Union and received both diplomatic and financial aid from it. Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of Soviet Union, decided to convert Cuba into a Russian base, and this was the time when the conflicts began to rise. Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of Soviet Union, decided to convert Cuba into a Russian base in 1962. He placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. The installation of these weapons put the US for the first time under fire from close range and nearly doubled the number of bases or cities in American mainland which could be threatened by USSR. Who is Fidel Castro? Fidel Castro is a Cuban politician and a revolutionary who governed the Republic of Cuba. In April 1961, the leaders of unions of Soviet Socialist republics were worried that the United States of America would invade communist rule in Cuba and overthrow Fidel Castro. 3 weeks after the Soviet Union had placed the nuclear weapons in Cuba, the Americans became aware of it. The question began to rise. Why does a nation like USA, who is a superpower, is afraid of a small nation? The installation of these weapons by Soviet Union put the US for the first time under the fire from close range and nearly doubled the number of bases or cities in American mainland, which could be threatened by the USSR. The US President John F. Kennedy and his advisors were reluctant to do anything that might lead to full-scale nuclear war between the two countries, but they were determined to get Khrushchev to remove the missiles and nuclear weapons from Cuba. Kennedy Earlier, both USSR and USA were indirectly contradicting each other, but now both the warships are standing against each other in the American Bay, and a clash seemed imminent in what came to be known as Cuban Missile Crisis. The prospects of Cuban Missile Crisis made the whole world nervous, for it would have been no ordinary war. Eventually, to the world's great relief, both sides decided to avoid war, and logic of deterrence was applied. The Soviet ships slowed down and turned back. Later in 90s, both American President John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev decided that they were going to cooperate with each other.